So this is the thing Charles drew, and honestly, and this is the beauty about relationships. You never close any doors.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
The only people you close doors on are people that are fraudulent.
Yes.
Everybody else, there's always a second chance.
Oh, yeah.
I'm happy to close out my current deal and go back to them and say, look, you know what? I will buy yours too. The most important variable that drives economic growth is investment. So if you did economics 101, they'll tell you when you're calculating your GDP, I is one of the most important places.
Investment.
What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Grind.
BTG.
Hey, if this is your first time tuning in, welcome. And please don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of our future content. Our podcast is for the doers and the dreamers who are ready to take their lessons and turn them into actions. My name is Kay.
I'm Alan.
And I'm Tosin. And today we've got an awesome guest with us
That's
today.
right.
His name is Femi Oladehin. He is a seasoned investment banker with over 30 years of experience across corporate finance, private equity, and infrastructure development. He has led major transformations across Africa and global markets and currently serves as a senior pastor and leadership mentor, bridging finance, leadership, and faith. BTG fam, help me welcome Femi Oladehin.
Hi guys.
Wait, did
thank
he
you for
say
having
30 years?
30 years.
35 years.
And
That means all the gray hair you've
I
earned.
earned
them.
every single one of them.
He doesn't look a day over 30 though.
Sometimes I blame my kids for each one that I have, but yeah. I think I've earned
welcome.
everyone.
Thank you so much for coming.
Welcome. You
Thank
know
you so
what?
much,
Let's
guys.
jump right into it because I was thinking about it for our viewers out there. What is investment banking?
Okay, so investment banking is what I call the bridge between the providers of finance and the users of finance.
Okay.
So basically, my job is to find the guys who have capital, are looking for a return, and then to find the guys who need capital and are able to deliver a return and to bridge that relationship. So if you look at the markets and the countries' economies and all of that, the most important variable that drives economic growth is investment. So if you did economics 101, they'll tell you when you're calculating your GDP, I is one of the most important places
Investment.
that you need to do, and that's investment. And what we do is that we catalyze that investment by helping, say, so I always say that I'm like the midwife who helps birth a baby, or like I like this one, in Yoruba culture in Africa, they call someone the mediator when it comes to marriage, right?
Yeah.
So the guy who introduces the two spouses. And what happens is that once they're married, his job is done, so they kick him out. And usually that's what happens.
Yeah.
The moment the providers of finance and the people who require finance have found a
together.
structure that works and all of that, my job is more or less done, except they want to scale up or they want to do something else. So I think that generally, that's the easiest way to describe investment banking.
Oh, nice.
I solve problems for people. And it doesn't matter whether it's a small company, it's a large government, it's the biggest oil and gas company in the world. It's usually the same thing.
That's interesting. First, let me just say I do appreciate you being here because I know you're a very busy person.
That's right.
So when our producer told us that you were coming in, we had to get excited for that.
But I mean, look, so you know that I follow you guys, right? And so, I mean, I had no choice. The moment he said to me, you have to do BTG, I'm like, of course, I'm actually honored to be with you guys.
For
sure.
The brain power that's sitting in this room, if there was popcorn here, I'll probably start.
Amen.
So I got a quick question for you, Femi. So, most kids growing up, they want to be a doctor, they want to be a lawyer, engineer, rarely do you hear people say that I want to be an investment banker, right? And I'm not sure if that was even your ambition growing up. Can you just talk to us about how you ended up landing as an investment banker?
So it's interesting, right? Weird that you said exactly the way you described it. I never met anyone growing up who said, I want to be an investment banker.
Nope.
Never met anyone. But of course, today, there are a lot more kids who are looking at it and saying, I would like to do investment banking.
Yeah.
I think my nephew for example, wants to be an investment banker. My daughter wants to be an investment banker.
Well,
She
when
likes
they've
money.
seen the fruits.
Yeah, she likes money. So she likes money. So she's like, you make a lot of money, so I want to be what you are. And what do you do? Yeah,
let me be that.
I want to be that. But for me, right, starting on my career, I was an accountant. I mean, I qualified as a chartered accountant pretty early in my career, in my life.
Okay.
I was 16.
Is that the equivalent of a CPA?
That's the equivalent of a CPA.
At 16.
So yeah, at 16, I was qualified. Actually, until probably this summer, I was the youngest person who had qualified since 1992.
Wow.
So somebody finally seems to have beaten my record.
Saw that.
Yeah, some girl.
Yeah. Yes,
and I'm
yes.
looking for her. But I started out in finance. So basically in accounting. So some context, I'm on the spectrum. And so accounting and audit was just the worst place I could find myself. I got burnt out very quickly. The monotony was a problem for
That's
me. Luckily, early in my career, I started out with audit. And my father dreamt that it was going to become Oladehin.
Okay.
His accounting
Because he
firm.
had an accounting firm.
He had an accounting firm.
Yeah,
And it was going to be an accountant. And I think 1.5 years into running the firm, I literally just tell you know what, I'm done. So at 17 and a half, I basically was like, look, you know what, I'm done. I can't do this for the rest of my
big
life.
age.
Yeah, and yeah, it was a big age
That
for me.
big age, right?
And I was like, I'm done. So I went and did my MBA. But whilst I was working on my MBA, I got a job in a company called ARM. But I started out in finance as well when I got to ARM. But I noticed that I struggled. So every 18 months, my performance would be great for 18 months.
And
but
then-
after 18 months, I just had a dip.
You get
Real
bored.
quick, let me go back. What do you mean by on the spectrum? What specifically?
So
'cause I think it ties
I have
into what you're
ADHD.
saying, right? Okay.
I have ADHD. I have the attention span of a rat. That's literally what it is. You can't keep my attention for more than a few
So the
minutes.
18 months made sense.
Yes. So the 18 months was, and unfortunately, I wasn't diagnosed. So I just knew that my performance was A star. By my
just
third
very-
A star was usually borderline, but by the fourth appraisal cycle, I just had a dip. But so somehow my CEO then kind of noticed that there was a pattern where I just kept dropping off. So I had the privilege of being able to work in different units. So what it then did for me was, after 2 years in every role, I got moved to another role. So I'll get the excitement that comes from a new role, and
New
all of that, new
experience, all that.
experience.
Yeah.
And I get it. I do it
Yeah.
for 18 months. By the time we're getting towards the end of 18 months, I start calling in
Right.
sick, and stuff like that.
Start calling
Because what's
sick.
next? And so about 2003, I was running the company's proprietary portfolio.
Okay.
So at that point in time, where I was doing both trading and then it got combined with real estate. So I think the first time I actually found something that I did for more than 6 months or more than 1 year without burning out was real estate. And that was because I didn't have to sit in the office, right? I had to go to the sites, watch them build, and all of that. After a while, the guys thought I was an engineer. That was how deeply involved I was in the project. So I found it, I liked it.
Yeah.
And then in 2003, it was quite interesting. We were driving on 3rd Mainland Bridge in Lagos. So it's the longest bridge in Lagos, right? Or in Nigeria. So we're driving on the bridge, my MD and I were going to Abuja. And we're just having a conversation. And, he was like, what can we do? You mean this asset management? Yeah, it's great, but there was something crazy. So we saw there were billboards on the highway. And we thought, why don't we concession the billboards, invest in it, and people can come and pick it up and blah, blah, blah. So we then thought, okay, he says, go and develop it into a structure. Interesting story. And then the more we refined it, the more we found information, the more we realized that billboards won't cut it. The kind of funding that we're looking for, the kind of things we want to do, we need to do something crazier. We then found out that Lagos at that time actually had a booklet of infrastructure projects that they wanted to run. And they hadn't figured out how to do it. So when we got that booklet, we found what we needed to do.
Yeah.
So we took that booklet, broke it down into the different projects and all of that, spent some money developing to see what were the
Like
options.
plans, yeah.
And you know, I say this with some level of humility, but we wrote the PPP policy for Lagos State.
Oh, wow.
So Lagos State was the first country or the first subnational in Nigeria that had a private-public partnership framework.
Oh.
In fact, I say that I had to fly to Jamaica to study the structure that Jamaica had. Because again, third world country, you don't want to go and import something from the UK and bring it to Lagos,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know, so we
Might
went to
not work,
Jamaica, and then the law that the Jamaicans were using, we customized that law for a subnational in Nigeria, and we sponsored a private bill that became the PPP law in Lagos. So that
Nice.
structure,
Wow.
So then I started to find my niche. I found something that excited me, and then so as part of that structure, we then started the Lekki Toll Road. So the toll road now, I always say was a project that, you know, was conceived on a drive to the Third Mainland Bridge, on Third Mainland
Wow.
Bridge. And I ran that project for about 6 years. Before I left, then I got headhunted by a bank to come run their investment bank, and the rest they say is history. So I think what's key in that space is something that I see that we didn't do when we were growing up. You know, our parents never looked at the character of a child, looked at the personality of a child, and used that to shape where the child should end up.
Yeah.
It was almost like, oh, we have a doctor in the family, so we need a lawyer. We have a doctor, we need an engineer.
There
was
only
nothing
a
around the
set routes.
personality. Yes, there were just set routes.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing now is, so my younger daughter, they did a psychometric test for the kids. So she's in year 9, which is probably grade 9 in the US. But they did a psychometric test for them. And the fallout of that psychometric test was to choose a number of careers where they felt that the personality that the child had was
will
able to
flourish.
flourish.
Yeah.
Now, I always say that if I had that advantage in the first 10 years of my career, you know, I probably would have done much better, much faster. You know, but I had to make mistakes,
Have
you
to
know,
learn.
almost get fired a few times, you know, before I then found investment banking, you know, and so for me, it's such a great place to be now. Bearing in mind that now I run a team of about 50 people, you know, different markets, and just seeing those kids coming as young graduates and all of that. And then 3-4 years later, I'm arguing with them about a financial structure.
Yeah.
And the guy is, you know, it's maybe not schooling me, but he's running rings around me, though. You know, and I have to be like, okay, Femi, you can't win, you can't lose this argument. You've got to bring something this guy has never seen before
That's
in his
right.
life. But I think for me, that's the excitement that I feel now.
I think a lot of people have, at least nowadays, right? They've heard about venture capital, private equity, investment banks, and all that stuff. But I don't think people really know the internal workings of those types of firms.
Yeah.
Like, how do you guys make money? Like, tell us a little bit about how it works in the back end.
So I like this one, you know, because, you know, so I became CEO probably about 18 months ago. But before then, I still had, you know, P&L responsibilities. I've had P&L responsibilities probably for like 20 years.
What does that mean, P&L responsibilities?
That means that I'm responsible for making money for the firm.
Profit and
So,
loss.
So you have
and
like a
in
goal.
In IB, we say that you eat what you kill.
That's right.
You know, so
in a lot of worlds.
yeah, you eat what you kill, bro.
That's right.
You know, we don't pay salaries. There's no money.
That's
Because
right.
first, no bank is even going to give me an overdraft because they're just going to be like, "Who are you again?" You know. But how do we make money? So, you know, just being that midwife or being that arbiter between the providers of capital and the users of capital means that you can charge a fee, right? And why can you charge a fee? There's a lot of value that you can bring in. First, if Charles is an entrepreneur, he has an emotional response to the value of his company. The only way I can help him manage that emotional response is if I stand in between him and his emotions.
That's right.
And so when a founder shows up, Charles is going to be like, well, they sold this company for $20 billion yesterday. Mine is 35. somebody has to be able to say to him, maybe not, maybe you're just like one, you know, and all of that. But it's a science and it's also an art. And that's what I say. The difference between why I'm successful as an investment banker and somebody else is not successful is usually the art. The science is the same. If you gave him a balance sheet and you gave him a balance sheet and you said do evaluation, if the parameters are the same, 90% of the time, your degree of difference cannot be more than 1%. So the science is the same. However, why would JP Morgan Stanley,
Goldman Sachs,
Goldman, why would they consistently get the jobs when others don't? It's about, do you have the relationships? Do you have the art of being able to structure when there's a problem? Because problems are always going to show up, you know. And do you have the network to also to be able to syndicate a transaction? So let me give you a real life example. And then this happened recently. So I'm working on a transaction with a bank in Nigeria, and pretty smart guys, and it was a very complex transaction. They had spoken to another group who had presented to them, and they were going to go with the guys. And someone just said, look, you know what? Have you spoken to these guys? Let's even hear what they have to say. So I sit down with my team and I say to them, we need to think out of the box. We need to create a structure for these guys that is going to blow their minds. So it's weird. They literally gave us like 2 hours. The guy calls me at 9 o'clock and said, we have a board meeting at 11. You need to come and present at a board meeting. Wow. So I'm like,
all hands on deck.
And I mean, I have 5 guys working on different pages and all of that. So we get to the boardroom of the company and I'm sitting in the reception, waiting for them to call us in. And I'm able to tunnel vision because, again, I have ADHD. So I know for me to be able to be productive, I have to focus. So I tunnel vision in that room and I'm like, why would these guys give us this job? We need to do something that I'm sure the other guys didn't think about. So I call my EA and I say to him, sit down beside me. I need to start working on a slide that talks about the risks, what can go wrong, how are we able to mitigate it, and what is the final outcome. And we had that slide. We literally did it, and they called us in 5 minutes. So we done the pitch. And, you know, I can read body language very well. Don't worry, I'm great about that. And it was just lukewarm. And then we got to, and I said, look, you know what? Bring up that slide. And then we bring up the slide. And you could see their faces light up. Because they hadn't thought about certain things that could go wrong. And they were not prepared for it. But we were. So that's where the art comes from. Because that's not science. It's someone who's looking at a transaction and saying, you know, what can go wrong in this transaction and how do we mitigate against it? So I think that for anyone who's looking to do this kind of, to play this kind of role or to look at this kind of career, the one thing you can't afford to be is a box thinker. Would have you for lunch, you know, I mean, easily would have you for lunch because you have to understand we're selling a commodity. So what differentiates us is the ability to bring that extra nuance, extra understanding, extra value, extra culture, you know, extra relationship into the mix. And sometimes that's what differentiates whether you get a deal or not. So how we make money is when we're able to demonstrate that value to the client. You know, because the same transaction, someone was charging the bank 0.5%. I could get away with 1.5 because I'm bringing in more value to the table, you know, and when there's a problem down the line, I've already anticipated it. And we've already thought, okay, if this happens here, this is our plan B, this is our plan C. So I think that it's like a surgeon, right, that's opened up a patient and suddenly realizes that there's something wrong. You're not going to go into a book and start reading. So what happens when there's a twist in the no, you've got to figure it out right there. And what separates a great surgeon from a good one is how does it pivot when there's a problem. And that's what separates a great investment banker from a good one. How do you pivot when there's a problem?
Man, you said it so well, because one of my struggles is how do you package your value that you have, right? I think each let's even say service providers, right? You can be a CPA, you can be an attorney, you can even be a landscaper, right? It's a commodity that we're all serving. There are a lot of different people that do this same business that you're doing. But what would make people go with you rather than that next person? Because I always tell my staff, be guaranteed, like I can guarantee all of our clients, especially the really good ones, they're being pitched to almost every day.
I think it's really
Right.
I think
So you've got to make sure that you're providing that value, and you can also articulate that value so that they don't get carried away by the next pitch.
Yeah.
I think a relationship and the ability to actually deliver and track record beats any thing you have to say. If your pitch, I give you the when have you done it?
Oh no, and that's so true. That's so true.
What relates to that at least?
That you've done.
And even if it's something completely different, okay, we'll take that into consideration that you're a person of your word. You've done something similar. And I was talking to my friend about this recently. There's a difference. You have to take things with a grain of salt. There's a difference when, I had someone who had a lot of experience and did a lot with a company, right? But that's different when you go on your own. They come to you and they say, "Hey, I can be this consultant. I did this for this company when I used to work for them." Da 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 da. Yes, you're shielded by the umbrella of the company, infrastructure. You're hitting goals. Any mistakes are gonna cut in the butt. They're gonna, it's like a little dog. They say you hit it on the foot or be like, "Don't do that."
Don't do that.
On your own, what have you done? So you can't really take what you've done under the shield of a big company and completely say it's going to translate. Yes, we'll take it into consideration, but you also have to understand that like you haven't done anything on your own. So that is it Tom Brady or is it the system? Right? Which is it? The assistant quarterback?
Absolutely.
Can somebody else, the next person,
can we
do the same
plug and
thing?
play you into another structure?
Or are you one of one? You know?
And the truth, Charles, is that I've seen people excel within a large corporate structure.
Right. Yep.
They come into my firm, and 1 year they're out.
I tell them, you're thinking with big company mindset. Please, but let's cut it down.
Companies expose you.
No, so but so guess what? I had the same problem when I moved into a big structure.
The reverse.
Yes, I had the reverse.
How?
So,
You got all the resources.
no, but I got things done. All of a sudden, someone is saying to me, "Oh, someone in HQ has to sign off." I'm like, "What?" Oh no!
So it takes more time.
So it's the stuff of legends. I once resigned from a job on a plane.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was on a flight. I was traveling to South Africa, and I got an email from someone in credit or something declining a transaction I'd worked like months on, and flimsy reasons for it and all of that. And when I was much younger, I was hot-headed. Some people would still say that I still am, but I deny that. But
Subjective.
We're using Blackberries then.
Yeah.
And I went into this mad tirade. And I just you guys are a bunch of jokers, blah, 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 blah. I'm done.
Goodness.
And then you know what I did? And I switched off my phone. And then I went on the flight. By the time I landed the following morning, there were like 200 emails. Because I just caused mayhem across the bank.
Oh wow!
Like what happened? What have we done? Da 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 da. And so for me, it took quite some time to adjust to that structure because I had direct access to my CEO.
Right.
If something had come up, I could walk straight to his office and say, "This is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Should we do it?" He says, "No. Well, look, I like your idea. Let's go with your idea," and that's it. Then all of a sudden, I'm sending an email and I'm waiting for 2 days.
Yeah,
3 days.
it's got to climb
3
some
days.
levels.
Yes, because it's going through the hoops.
Yeah.
And of course I lose my marbles and I'm just like, I can't do this.
Can't.
You know
can't
what?
deliver
I can actually
because-
relate with that because me, going from a startup where, we don't have time for bureaucracy. Like decisions need to be made ASAP.
Yeah.
Now going to a Fortune 500 company and you're like, oh, I have all the resources in the world, but
Right.
guess what? there's so many politics.
It's bureaucracy,
so many, like,
bro.
It's
Send this, send
ridiculous.
that, send that.
Someone in compliance is going to say section 2.
Right?
You cannot send that email that
right.
way.
Wow.
And you're thinking to
Well,
yourself,
it takes at least this amount of time to do
the
this.
client wants to pay.
Yeah.
Right?
What?
Just give me the account number,
Why are you
rounding
holding
number.
me back?
What are we waiting for? And
Why are you holding me back?
I gotta go back and tell him
Say,
that
say,
he's
well,
gonna wait.
sorry,
And
we
he's gonna
have
take
to
his
wait.
business elsewhere.
Yeah.
That is so good. I've just never heard it.
I
want to
ask you something, Femi, because we've been talking about value, right? I think one of the things that cannot be underestimated is the value of even knowing a client's business even more than they do.
Ooh.
And the reason why I said that is because
That's his strength right there.
you know, everybody know that I'm a startup founder, right? And you know, it's one thing for me to help and guide them step by step. It's another thing when they're now ready to bring on partnership or they're ready to raise money. Like there's a sense of confidence that they have me coming on the call with them just to be able to fill in the gaps where it's needed, right? Can you kind of talk about how much value clients place on that?
So I'm going to advertise now. Because we didn't talk about where I work. So I work with a company called Argentine Capital Limited, right? Probably one of the more successful investment banks in Nigeria. But what I say to people
is the same.
well, you know, but what I say to people is the reason why we've succeeded over the last 20 plus years, is because our clients trust us implicitly. I don't even have to do anything. No. So let me tell you how much trust our clients have in us. I did a transaction where I was selling a company for a client. This was 2016. Transaction started probably about 2015 and closed December 2016. The client and nobody in the client's team showed up in any negotiations or any discussions until we were closing out on the final SPA. Nobody did. I'm not kidding. You know, that transaction won deal of the year in 2016, equity deal of the year. It was a major deal. And it was epochal because we brought in FDIs into Nigeria at a time when no one was investing in Nigeria. So if you remember, 2016 was a really bad year. That was Buhari's second year and it was a complete train smash. And we brought it, I mean, we were responsible for almost 60% of the FDIs and M&A that came into Nigeria that year.
Can you explain what FDIs are?
So FDIs is foreign investments coming into a market. Yes. So foreign direct investment. That's what FDIs are. Sorry, I like buzzwords. You know, but what stood out for me was the guys who bought the company from my client tried to hire me after the transaction was over.
When you
so
have
that I could
never
come around
worked
the
for the client.
I mean, so I could come around the company.
You did such a good
because I mean, they would ask for everything, and I didn't say, "Oh, hold on, let me check." We had answers.
Right then, on demand.
It was on demand.
Before ChatGPT.
Before, yes.
treated their client. The client so
they were
well.
like, you know what? Can you come and run this company for us?
Right.
You know, and the reason is that, look, if I went to a doctor, right? So I mean, I had an emergency a few weeks ago, right? And then asked my friend, I need to sort this out. And he tells me to go meet Charles. Interesting story. So he tells me to go meet Charles. Now, I've never seen Charles treat anyone, you know, and so I call up Charles. I didn't even realize it was him because I know him as Charles. I didn't know him as Dr. Allen. So when he was going to send me the message, he said Dr. Allen. So I checked him up and he says, oh, yeah, come in. You know, so I go in and they fix it. And I was like, how much is my bill? He was like, oh, no, don't worry, it's on the house. Interesting story.
Hey, hold on.
Wait. There's something coming up. But this is it, right? A few weeks later, I had a very bad pain in my teeth. Who do you think I went to?
You went to Charles.
I called him up. I'm like, look, I've got my tooth is killing me. I'd gotten treatment in Nigeria before I came, but it looks like it's failed. I need you to come fix it up. I showed up with him and he fixed it. So here is the thing. Just think about it that way. Now, the reason why I'm comfortable to go to someone who's never treated me before is because someone else has had an experience with that person and said to me, I'll recommend you to go and see him.
Yes.
Now, but my own experience now trumps that.
Yes.
I'm never going to refer to, somebody told me to come to you anymore. I'm going to speak about my own experience
That's right.
when I've gone to you.
That's
So
right.
you see, when clients see that, they never forget. I have a client who we started servicing in 2012, in 2016, and he still tells the story of how we started servicing him in 2012. Because at the time when we started servicing him, no one was going to touch him.
Wow.
He had just left the organization where he was working, and they considered him a bad leaver. And I just put my neck on the line. I'm like, I like that guy. I think he's credible and I think he's going to be successful. And we did things with him that the rest of the market just couldn't understand. We were raising money for an industry that the banks had stopped lending to.
Wow.
But at the time when we were going to close, we had 3 offers from the banks, all offering him $35 million in acquisition finance and $300 million of trade finance.
Wow.
But this was an industry where the banks were not touching anymore. So he tells that story every time. He's like, these guys, I don't know how they did it, but banks give me money when they are not giving even the bigger companies money. Now, again, it's also the way you tell the story.
That's right.
When you come in and you tell a story confidently and you can answer questions confidently and the guys go do due diligence on what you've said, and it turns out to be exactly what you said, you've created credibility for the client and you've created credibility for yourself. Then you've now got credibility with the other party.
Yeah.
So guess what? When that party wants to do a transaction where they feel you are not conflicted, they're going to call you.
Yeah.
It's just the natural thing to do. So what I say to people is that if you're running a business, and it doesn't matter what it is, it might be a restaurant, it might be a dental, practice, it might be a hospital, it might be an investment bank. You must put the client first.
Yeah.
You're there to service the client. You solely exist to service the client. And once you put the client first, the client wants to be able to trust you with whatever decisions you're making, whatever conversations they're having with you. Confidentiality is also a big deal. That's something that, if you want to be an investment banker, you better know how to shut up.
Yeah.
You better know how to keep your mouth shut. In fact, when I'm hiring people, it's the one thing I do. So what deals are you working on now? The moment you mention the client, you're done. You don't get a second interview.
Wow.
Well, I'm the final interview.
At least don't
but you don't
leave
get
the
hired.
name out.
Yeah, you can tell me about
the
it.
specifics.
But you have to. So because clients value confidentiality, just information that's out there can change the value of a company.
Right. That's right.
From $20 million
That's right.
to $50 million.
That's right.
And you're costing the client.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that you must do, but the Chinese would say that know thyself, and in all thy knowings, know thyself. I'm paraphrasing, but the truth is know your client. And in all your knowings, know your client. The moment the client is comfortable that you understand their business, it makes it difficult for someone else to come in and take you out. Because the guy knows that I know where all the bodies are buried.
That's right.
Right. I mean, at some point in my career, I used to answer audit queries on behalf of my clients.
Wow.
The CFO is frantically texting me. I say, you remember that transaction we did? They're asking, do you have the details? I'm like, yeah, hold on. And 2 minutes, I've given him the details. And he knows he doesn't have to go and double check. I mean, again, because I have ADHD, right? So numbers, I never forget numbers, right? If I've seen a number once, I'll never forget it. If you ask me 20 years later, I'll remember. So I think there's a lot of ways where you can add value to people, and you must be obsessed with it. I think that's the key. Obsessed with just creating value and demonstrating it to your clients. They'll come back. Yeah. Even when they go and meet someone else, they will collect their L and they will come back.
That's true.
Definitely. Definitely.
Did you collect the L when you went to Nigeria to the other dentist?
Well, yes, I did. But that was before you, though.
I'm kidding.
That was before you. Now, so I was supposed to have a follow up with the guys, and I had to cancel it. I'm like, well, sorry, someone else has fixed me.
Real quick, let's talk about the founders themselves, all right? Or, the clients that you work with. Because you briefly touched on it, but I want us to talk a little bit more about it. You were talking about not falling in love, not being, separating the emotion from your idea or from your business, right? Tell us a little bit about that, because we've got many founders, we've got many folks that are maybe operating startups, we've got many folks that are maybe thinking about jumping into entrepreneurship, and they're thinking to themselves, this idea, this is it. I'm the only one that can do this. My idea is, tell us more about.
Sign this NDA or
you haven't generated. You barely have written anything
we're
down.
We're working on the transaction together now.
Okay.
So Corey and I, and it's the most hilarious thing. But we wouldn't talk about it on this show. Maybe the next one.
Next
we'll
one. But tell us about that perspective.
So this is the thing, right? And I'll give you a real life example. So my older brother is a serial entrepreneur. Started a couple of businesses. In fact, there's one that he could have scaled, but he got sabotaged by one of his staff. Big learning for him. He became one of the biggest distributors of music in Nigeria. And someone stole the database. Because I mean, it's in court now, but business is gone. So, but there's something that happened, right? So he has this great idea. He's a medical doctor. So he has this great idea, and it is great. And he's pitched it to me. I need a few $100,000 seed round, and blah, 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 pre-seed, and all of that. And I looked at him and I said, I like this idea, but are you sure that you're the only person that, oh yes, the way we thought about it, it is, we're bespoke, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, have you fed into anything into ChatGPT? And all of that.
He doesn't want the AI to steal it, I'm sure.
So guess what? 2 weeks later, I get a cold call from a guy from the UK. Oh, hi, Mr. Oladehin, how are you? Blah, 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 blah. I need to pitch something to you. I know you guys invest, and I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's fix the time. So he calls me and he starts pitching. And guess what? Exactly the same idea that my brother had. So I did something silly. I said, hold on a minute. So I added my brother to the call. And I was like, hey, repeat what you were saying again. And of course, my brother got defensive and I said to him, no, calm down. As an entrepreneur, as a founder, don't ever be in love with your idea.
Yeah.
The only place you should fall into love with is the market. The market is going to give you humble pie. It is going to slap you. It's going to reset your brain, and it's going to show you whether you're alive or not. Look, let me remind people of something. I mean, I know that I'm going to age myself now, but in 2001, we had what was called the dot-com bubble.
That's right.
Yes.
There's a company called Napster.
I don't know if you guys
remember Napster.
We're all millennials. We should.
So you should remember Napster. There are so many companies like that. They had fantastic ideas.
That's right.
First, they couldn't commercialize. So the venture capital industry moved from great ideas to can you commercialize? Then from commercialize, we now do can you scale? So there's so many hoops that you need to jump through. As an entrepreneur, if you're not constantly refining your idea and constantly checking with the market, you're going to put yourself in a bubble where you think you're the best thing after ice cream. And you're going to raise money from people, destroy your credibility. And 18 months down the line, you've burned through the cash and there's nothing to show for it. So what I'm going to say to you, and if there's anything you take out of this conversation today, is don't be obsessed with your idea. Let the market be the biggest test.
That's right.
For your idea. Let the market be able to say to you, yes, we like what you're doing, and we're willing to pay for it. So, in PPPs, one of the biggest tests you have to do for a PPP to work is what we call the willingness to pay. But there's what we call the willingness to pay, and there's also the ability to pay. They're two different things entirely. Right. And that's what you must always think about for your business. What are you displacing in my life that provides me with the actual cash that enables me to pay you? If you're not displacing anything in my life today that frees up cash for me to pay you, then your business is not going to survive.
Hey, you know what? You make such a great point, because I remember after my startup head went down, I had a plethora of founders reaching out to me because They wanted to understand how I got to where I was. And so in my mind, I'm like, you know what? I'm giving out all these free nuggets. Let me make it a business. So I went in, Tosin know about this. I went and started Horizon. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to start advising founders and I'm going to charge them a certain amount of money. Where my math was wrong is that even though there was a demand for my service, they can't pay for my service. You know?
The ability to pay.
Exactly.
There's a willingness to pay, but the ability to pay doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah. And look, and the truth is that if you came to me as an investment banker, I'm dispassionate. I don't give a
Rats.
but
just care about,
on your
is
business. All I care about is, can I make money from you?
Yeah.
So I'm going to be dispassionate. I'm going to look you straight in the eye and say,
You should.
guy, this is your idea. It's great on paper. But when we get to the market, it can't scale.
Well, let's have that conversation then, right? Because I want it to be as practical as possible. So let's say a founder is out there looking to raise money. Typically, when they come to me, you know, I try not to be the bad guy, right? But I do know that a lot of founders, they're so invested in the idea that the thought of you telling them that's not going to work does not exist, right? So what should be the mindset of the founder, number one? What is the biggest misconception about raising money? And then number three, how do you assess deals to determine whether you fund a deal?
A deal. Okay, so good. First question is, what should be the mindset of the founder? And honestly, you must have a fatalist mindset.
Okay.
You know, and I know that I'm a pastor, right? So it might sound a bit, you know,
but you're also a realist too.
But I'm a realist. I mean, everyone know a pastor knows that. You know, you must have a fatalistic perspective. Say, what if this doesn't work? You know, I said to you guys that when I was going into that pitch with a bank, when I sat down in the reception, the one thing that struck me was that, what can go wrong? And just by answering the questions of what can go wrong and what will we do if it goes wrong, or what have we put into our structure that ensures that we can survive to mitigate against it, it changed the perspective of those guys had negotiated, they had closed the deal with another party and they cut it off and they came to us. And that's the way you must think as an entrepreneur and to say, what could go wrong? And if it goes wrong, what happens to me? So you must, I mean, failure should not be fatal. But you must have a fatalistic mindset that says, what if this doesn't work? What's my plan B? Yes. What's my plan B? Now, when it comes to
the misconceptions
about raising money, I think the first thing is that everyone thinks an idea can be funded. It's not every idea that can be funded. Also understand that the guys who have the funding some of them have charters. What can I invest in? What kind of investments can I do? You know, what kind of, what's the tenor, and all of that. So you have to check that first. So also make sure that the people you're talking to are the right people you should be talking to.
It fits into their portfolio.
Is it in their portfolio? Charles asked it, have they done it before? You know, you don't let anyone use you as a guinea pig to say, oh, we've never invested in that industry, but we'll look at it. Bro, they're not going to look at nothing.
Wow.
Yet it's too expensive for them to spend that time doing it. So very important. Second thing is that most people are looking for an exit. So an entrepreneur, when you're talking to a funder, the guy is like, how am I going to make money? We're looking at an investment opportunity. I'm asking myself, how am I going to make money? And if I want to exit in 3 years' time, because I want to buy a yacht, I want to buy a private jet, can I exit? You must always have exit at the back of your mind. It's either you're doing a strategic sale, you're doing a listing, whatever it is, but you must have that at the back of your mind. You know, because if you're just thinking about 12 months, bro, I care about 15 months, I care about 30 months, I care about 45 months, 60 months, because I want to be wealthy by investing in you. I'm not there for the short haul. I want that exit, IPO. Like the guys who lost money with Elon, you know, but they made money. Sorry, let me choose my word with Elon Musk. You know, so that's important. Last question you asked was,
how do you assess
deals? So look, again, it's the same question. Willingness. You've come to me with an idea. First is, can I model your future? Can I, with a high sense of what do I call it? Certainty. Can I model your business? That's very important to me. Secondly, is willingness and ability to pay.
Right.
Is there a market out there, and are people willing and have the ability to pay for the service that you're providing? Thirdly, would be the team.
Yeah. Can you execute?
People are more important than ideas.
That's right.
Ideas are
Say it
plenty.
again.
And look,
Say it again.
so I'll tell you the story in 1 minute. So there's this guy, serial guy, Canadian chap, and he's made money, he's lost money. So someday I was having dinner with one of his investors. So I asked him, why do you back this guy? He just looks like a snake oil salesman. And you know what he said to me? He said, Femi, he says he's made me more money than he's lost me. And I was like, boom.
Period.
In my head. I was like, okay, I can live with that.
Basic math.
I can live with that. The guy's lost $100 million, but he's made $5 billion. Come on, man. Return on equity, I'm okay. So the moment I can check those boxes, but it's people that deliver that. It's not ideas. Everybody on the streets has ideas. Even the homeless guy has ideas. But can he execute? Does he have the staying power? When there are problems, can he pivot? Can he bring other people
leadership.
together?
Leadership.
Can he bring other people together to deliver? Those things are very important. And so if I was scoring an investment, believe it or not, financials would probably be 15-20% for a startup. Leadership, people, market, those are the big things that I'm looking for. Because in the event that you fail in delivering, can I take your idea
and replace the operator?
And continue to run it?
That's it.
But that's the thing.
If you're assessing all these deals through that lens, then why is it that founders are more likely to go to a VC versus going to an investment banker?
So because they don't want to pay. So that's usually what happens. They don't want to pay. They feel like, oh, if I can talk to the funder directly, why do I need you? But what I do for you is I answer all those hard questions.
You ask it first.
Of course. I ask it first. I challenge your premise, your premise of your ideas. So they don't like me because I'm the one who's going to say to you, you're an idiot. This idea is idiotic. It's not going to work.
But it saves the time.
Because the VCs are going to be like, oh we're going to look into that. We're going to look at it. And you're going to pitch.
But with me, when I've gone through your business plan, when I've gone through your pitch document, if I send it to 3 VCs, 2 guys are going to call me and send me an email and say, let's talk. Because I would have answered every single question that they have. Exactly the same way I talked about the pitch to the bank. So every question that the risk guy had, I had answered. Legal, we had answers. Everyone. So they were like, when I was not in the room, they were like, well, we have to go with these guys. Otherwise, we're going to get into trouble with those other ones. They didn't even think about the problem.
Ask these questions.
Do you understand? So I think that it always goes back to the emotional thing. One of the beauties that I have, that I'm grateful for being on the spectrum, is that I don't have emotions. I barely do. I can walk away from anything. I can save my beat and move on. So it helps me to be dispassionate even when I'm looking at investment opportunities. It's very simple. Does it work? So with my brother, what I then had to do with him was I had to bring him into my team and say, you've got to pay. So now my brother's paying and we're refining his document for him.
Nice.
But I know that when we're done and we hit the market, we're going to raise money for it. Because we've answered all the questions. We've challenged your business plan. We've challenged your ideas. You've thought about it again. You've refined it. You've come back. So when I get into a pitch meeting, by the time I'm on the 3rd page, the investor is asking me for an NDA.
But what if I can't afford you?
So look, again,
because these are startups you're talking about.
Fair question, right? One of the things that founders also need to think about is be creative in how you see value. Look, my father would say that 100% of 0 is 0.
Correct.
And it's true, it's maths, right?
Me and your father, we think
100% of 0 is 0. So if you come to me and I say to you, you know what?
That makes sense.
I would advise you, but I want 5% of your company in exchange. If you're a smart person, of course you will take it.
Because now you invested.
Not only that, you understand it. Not only that, now I must make sure you succeed.
That's right. Because that's
your
the only way I get
success-
paid.
Yes. Your success is now mine.
Yeah.
So I can invest my time. So look, one of my partners, Olu, he always talks about he's like, look, Femi, I'm tired of this advisory work. We just make other people wealthy. So his model is different now. The way he thinks about transactions is that, look, I want equity.
Yeah.
But because the moment I take equity, we're tied at the hip.
Yep.
Your success is now my success.
Yeah.
I'm invested. But if
Yeah.
I'm just on the fee,
Yeah.
I collect my fee, I walk away. If you like, burn the company down tomorrow. That's your business. So I think that people need to think out of the box. Stop being greedy. One of my principles, and people who know me would say this: I don't look at other people's pockets. I know I don't. That's why I've never disagreed with anyone on money. I'm 51. It's never happened. There's no one in this world that would say, oh, Femi and I did a transaction and he shafted me.
Amen.
I'm just going to focus on my own pocket.
That's right.
If you're walking away with 20x, that's your business. I wanted 5x, I got my 5x.
We
I'm
can
going
all
to
make
sleep
money
well.
together. That's my
I'm going to
mindset.
sleep well.
Yeah.
And I think that once entrepreneurs and founders get past that,
Yes.
that mental block, oh, you can only get 10% of my company. I'm sure you guys, I don't know what they call it in the US, but they used to have this program or this TV show where people come and pitch to venture
Shark Tank.
capital.
We still got
great.
Shark
I
Tank.
think
Shark
Dragons something.
They call it Dragon's Den in Nigeria and blah, blah,
Yep.
blah, and all of that. And honestly, I've seen guys walk away from funding because they're arguing over 30%, 35%. And I'm thinking to myself,
They even say it on the show,
are
like
you okay?
5%
What's the
in
difference?
yeah.
What's the difference? You want 40%, you want 35%. It makes absolutely no difference to me. If I turn that company into a $1 billion company,
There's more than enough.
my lifestyle never changes with an extra $50 million.
Yeah.
If I have $1 billion, it doesn't change. It takes another $5 billion for my lifestyle to change.
Oh, you've already calculated
I was
that.
even telling people, I said,
It's true now.
founder of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, when he sold Twitter to Elon Musk, his only percentage was, I think, was like 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
He walked away with $1 billion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who cares? I will take my $1 billion, I will sail into the
Thank
horizon.
you.
And enjoy and be calling you guys. And I say, what did Twitter do yesterday? 20%. Okay, I think I'll tell my broker to buy another 3.
I think it still falls back into that falling in love with your idea and just being like, hey, this is
not your
mine.
wife.
You're kind of, you're
not
like
your
hugging
wife,
it
it's
all,
not your
you know,
child.
like.
I think the main thing for that is with people who are the founders of the company and starting on any company is that this is my blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
How much blood, sweat, and tears did you put in
Put
to
into
deserve
this,
this?
yeah.
And people feel like if you didn't come close to what they quantify as equating to whatever, say they're 100% of blood, sweat, and tears. If you're getting 30% of that, doesn't match what they quantify as 30% of the blood, sweat, and tears, they're like, no. And that's where the emotional part comes in.
But value different, because the value that you're bringing to your company hasn't done what it's meant to do.
Right,
If I
but
bring
I'm not
Femi in,
disagreeing. I'm saying if he comes in, say you have a startup, you only could get access to 500K, and he brings you 5 million. That's different than someone who brings you 700K. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but
yeah,
they
yeah.
ask the same percentage.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's the issue. A lot of people have with
Yeah.
letting that go.
I'll give a quick example. A buddy of mine, he had a startup and he's been trying to raise for 4 months, not one check. So he came to me. I said, let me look at your deck. And I looked at his deck and I said,
You're
even
never
I
going to
would,
raise money.
I wouldn't fund this. I said, because right now you're not showing me the things that I need to see to make me believe that, number one, are you the right guy to execute?
Right.
But number two, what is your competitive advantage? Why is it that you're going to be the one
Successful.
to be successful?
Why would
right?
you be the next Twitter?
Whatever.
Exactly. So we're going back and forth. I wanted to charge him a fee, and we're going back and forth. He didn't want to pay, but eventually we were able to agree on an equity deal. Right. Literally within 3 months, he closed $500,000, and I made him to understand. You see the value of bringing somebody who's been there, done that, is that now something that's meant to take you 1 year, you can achieve it in 2 months.
Shorter.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I agree with that. The only caveat I was saying is the quantification of that value that you bring. You may think it's 100%. He may think it's 10.
So
where that meets is where you guys
that's where you have to get
where the worth is.
I think
we both have different values, but we got to figure out what that worth is.
I think it's learning how to negotiate.
Correct.
So a lot of people don't know how to negotiate. So I always say this, it's okay. My partners maybe don't like it, but I always negotiate from a win-win point of view.
Yeah.
I want everyone to be happy.
Same.
That's my approach. I do full disclosures. People are like, why? I'm like, I'm not going to move beyond where I was going to move.
Right.
So if I give you information, you think you're going to use it for whatever it is, you're like, that's your business. If my value is $100 million, it's $100 million. You can speak English from today to tomorrow. As long as I can defend my $100 million valuation, we're going to stick to it. If you're going to get me to move, you have to demonstrate to me why I'm moving.
Yeah.
So you see, what happens with most entrepreneurs is that you start with the end in mind, right? You already have this idea of what it's supposed to look like, of what you want it to be. But you see where you are and where you're going. There's so many bumps, there's so many hoops, there's so many curves,
everything.
and all of that you've got to deal with and navigate. And when you have that mindset of, if I can do this and I can close it, I can do another one, it changes your perspective.
Yeah, but Femi, let me challenge you on that.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, right? So negotiating one-on-one is about having leverage. Would you agree?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Femi and I were on a call, and he put all his cards on the table, and I just kept thinking, like, what is going on here? Apparently,
Tricked you.
he's already made up his mind about what the end is going to look like. You get what I'm saying? But that's because he had leverage. Now, for somebody like me or for somebody like you who don't have, the obvious leverage,
raising the capital.
Yeah, how do you put yourself in a position to negotiate, especially when you don't have the leverage from day one?
But Corey, it's exactly the same thing. So
I agree.
So when you're on the side of the person who's trying to demonstrate value, your willingness to do a deal should always trump whether you win or not.
Yeah.
It's a thing. So look, again, your idea on that laptop is rubbish. It doesn't put $1 in your pocket. Your idea in my heart, in my head, is what makes me open my wallet and give you cash.
That's true.
So if you come into that place thinking, oh, I want to feel like I'm going to win this negotiation. No. So you see, those guys, they thought that they had leverage.
Yes.
Because, but the truth was
They were talking.
they were just talking, and I was just looking at them, and I just put my cards on the table. And in my head, I knew exactly what value they were bringing. I knew where, if their value, I could price their value. And if I had a scientific conversation with them, they would walk out of that room and thinking, oh, we just messed ourselves up. So for me, and that's why I always say, I would never negotiate from a place of weakness. I would always have all the information that I need to have. Yes, maybe there's something that I don't know that comes up and it's a red herring, I have to deal with it. That's okay. But I would be fully informed before I go into that meeting.
Yeah.
So when we were having that conversation with those guys, I was fully informed. I knew I'd researched the guys the moment you gave me their names.
Femi was playing chess.
I was just watching them. I was just looking at them. Like, look at
They're
this one.
still playing stones.
Look, yeah.
Not even.
I was just looking at them. Look at these jokers, and so, guess what? That same structure that they were looking at, I just bought the same structure for a fraction of what they were calling their own valuation. So guess what? Let me tell you what would happen. Another 5 years, they will still be running around with that nonsense and they will not achieve anything.
Oh,
with
I
it.
didn't tell you. They've been coming back chasing me, saying, "Okay, well, let's talk less." I'm like, it's gone.
Well, look, and so this is the thing, Charles Joe, and honestly, and this is the beauty about relationships. You never close any doors.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's right.
what
The
I'm saying.
only people you close doors on are people that are fraudulent.
Yes.
Everybody else, there's always a second chance.
Oh, yeah.
I'm happy to close out my current deal and go back to them and say, look, you know what? I will buy yours too. Because I want to build a big platform. That's what I want to do with it. I'm not going in small.
Yeah.
I'm putting in firepower behind this platform and I want it to grow. So think about it that way so that, and we've talked a lot about people not being emotional about their ideas. And I think, honestly, that's what it comes down to. Don't create a world in your head that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Be realistic. I said to you, I'm a pastor, but but I'm probably one of the most realistic people you're going to ever meet.
Yes, indeed.
You know, if you've got malaria, go to the hospital, don't call me. You know, they're just some basic things that, and it's exactly the same way.
What,
No,
what I say is that God has also given us wisdom.
Yes,
right.
Dr. Charles. You know, don't call me. What am I going to do?
He's already given us wisdom.
You heard that? If you're sick, don't call Pastor Femi.
Don't call me. I mean, except if hospitals haven't worked.
Yes.
Then we can pray.
Okay.
You know, and that's just practical, you know.
Well, at this time, we're going to go into
Such a good episode.
off the top segment, right? This is where I'm going to ask you 10
seen this a
rapid
few
questions,
times.
you know, and, you know, just the first thing that comes to your head, okay?
Sure.
Number one, build wealth or build legacy?
Legacy, always.
What's one word that defines great leadership?
Empathy,
What's the one habit that changed your life?
accountability.
Book or life experience?
Oh, life experience any day, every day.
Risk taker or calculator planner?
Calculated planner. So that's weird. Let's pause on that one for a bit. I think it's funny. So my guys sent me I'm doing my profile again, my personality profile, and I realized that I've changed.
Of course.
So of course, I mean, it would have been crazy if I was still the same
You're in a
person
different
I was
season.
at 21. Yeah. You know, so I'll still say that take risks.
Okay.
But count the costs. You know, count the costs. Just
That's
make sure
right.
you know what's the worst thing that can happen and be prepared for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. What's harder, building success or sustaining it?
Oh, sustaining.
Yeah. What's more important, vision or execution?
So my boss would say that execution will eat your strategy for lunch.
Yes, 100%.
So
I'm agreeing with you.
execution,
Okay. What's one lesson money has taught you?
that you can never have enough of it.
All right. Faith or ambition? What shaped your life more?
Faith. I didn't have a lot of ambition, honestly,
Really?
growing up. No, I didn't. A lot of what I wanted was to be comfortable. And it's the reason why.
That's why you live soft life.
Yes. No, but honestly, I don't stress.
Yeah.
I don't stress. If it doesn't work out, I mean, you know, you guys, I mean, we've been close for about a year now.
Yeah.
You know, I was working on a deal last year.
Yeah.
You know, and it just collapsed. I cried about it for 2 days and I was like, okay.
On to the next.
What's next?
Yeah, sure.
You know, yeah.
The last one, for folks who want to find you, where can people find Femi?
So I'm pretty active on social media. Well, I try to be, Instagram, Facebook, X, and it's the same handle at Femi Oladehin.
Oh.
And LinkedIn as well.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Alan, you got us up?
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, bro. From you know we love you. It's always nice to hang out, get some words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Dang.
Understanding
Lots.
who to call
Lots.
when we get sick.
Yeah.
Yes,
Or who not to call, right? But you know, like he had so much wisdom. I don't even know where to begin. I'm gonna go back and watch this episode because I gotta pick up some stuff,
Yes,
take
for
some
sure.
notes.
For sure.
But you know, he's taught us that like, you know, not just lead with your heart, but bring something to the table, be negotiating from not a place of weakness. Have all your information. Think of what could happen, what could go wrong. What are my solutions for that? Whenever you go into any relationship or negotiations.
Yeah.
You guys want to add anything to that?
No, I
don't know.
Well, one thing I would add is value.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Make sure you can articulate your
Yes.
value,
Yeah.
especially for us service providers out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
All right, until next time,
Until
guys.
next time.
Peace.
Where can they find us?
Thanks, everyone.
Go beyond the grind.
Go beyond the
.com.
grind.com.
All right, until next time.
Peace.
Also make strategic decisions and take calculated risks. We'll also talk about future-proofing your business so you can build a lasting legacy and true freedom. This isn't a one-sided conversation. We're all on this journey together to build a life and a business that works for you, so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes.